London's late November sky was as dreary as a blotched canvas of ash grey. A drizzle misted over porches and blurred the golden-lit windows of the affluent neighbourhood. Evelyn Whitmore tightened her wool coat around her body, her other hand gently resting on her son's shoulder. Oliver, an 11-year-old boy with deep, dark eyes, mirrored his late grandfather's. They stood before the wrought-iron gate of the old townhouse on Kensington Street, home of Victoria Penrose, Evelyn's stepmother, who had lived there alone since Evelyn's father passed away. Evelyn hadn't come out of desire. It was a duty that had clung to her since she was 4 years old, when her father brought home a young, beautiful woman and said, "This will be your mother." Evelyn knew well that there had never been any real bond between them. But the habit of compliance, paying visits and showing filial piety had been drilled into her like an invisible discipline. And that morning, she had brought Oliver here to settle that debt of hollow obligation. But the moment the gleaming black car appeared at the gate, Evelyn's heart sank. The silver emblem on its hood froze her blood. Sebastian Drake's Bentley, her husband's. Oliver noticed too. He frowned. "That's Dad's car." His voice was calm, without tremor or surprise, as though stating a simple equation. Yet Evelyn could hear the unspoken question, why is he here? Sebastian had told her he had a meeting in the city this morning, and it was busy until late evening. Not a word about visiting Victoria. And in all their 11 years of marriage, Evelyn had never seen them close enough to warrant a private meeting. Yet here his car sat neatly at the gate, like a predator lying in wait. Struggling for an explanation, Evelyn murmured, her voice faltering, "Maybe they're discussing the family's charity fund." She was referring to the Whitmore Foundation, her father's legacy. But even as she said it, the justification rang hollow. For years, Sebastian had exercised near total control over that fund. He thrived on numbers and investments, like the foundation's cash flow, the lifeblood running through his veins. Oliver turned to her, his gaze sharp and far older than his years. "He told you he had a meeting in the city, but he's here. That means he lied." A heavy silence fell. Evelyn felt the veins in her temples pounding, each beat like a hammer strike. Oliver drew a deep breath and whispered, "We can go back. But are you sure you want to miss the chance to learn the truth?" Before Evelyn could reply, Oliver was already heading toward the narrow alley beside the house. His slim figure, clad in a dark coat, melted into the drizzle, yet each step was steady, resolute. Evelyn knew her son had made his choice, and as always, she followed. The alley led them to the rear of the house, where the kitchen window was left ajar for ventilation. An old habit of the housekeeper, Evelyn recalled. The air smelled of dampness, tinged with the fading scent of roses in the garden. Mother and son stopped, holding their breath. From inside came Victoria's laughter, a sharp, honeyed sound, cold as a blade. "You play the perfect husband so well, Sebastian. 11 years, and she's never suspected a thing. The stepmother runs the foundation, and the husband manages the estate. A clean game of chess." Then Sebastian's voice, low and arrogant, followed. "By next quarter, everything will be mine. The accounts, the properties, the inheritance. Edward Whitmore's entire fortune will rest in our hands, and Evelyn won't be able to stop it." The brick wall before Evelyn seemed to tremble, ready to collapse. Her breath caught in her throat. Beside her, Oliver's small shoulders tensed like a coiled spring. Victoria's voice again, syrupy sweet. "And the girl? We'll need to tidy that up. Divorce? Too messy. A quiet asylum will be more fitting. The records already prove she's unstable. A young widow, rushed into marriage, plagued by baseless suspicions. It won't take much to convince anyone she's delusional." "You've prepared well," Sebastian replied with a soft chuckle. "I only learn from the best. For 25 years, since Evelyn was 4, you've molded her into the perfect puppet, obedient, dependent, pliable, an ideal victim." Their laughter mingled 2 drops of poison dissolving in wine. Evelyn swayed, needing the wall to steady herself. Oliver's small hand suddenly gripped hers with fierce strength, enough to hurt. He whispered, his voice harder than any grown man's, "We won't cry, Mother. We will win." The words ignited like fire in the suffocating dark. Evelyn turned to her son, his face still youthful, yet his eyes ablaze with resolve. In that moment, she understood. Oliver was not merely a child to be protected. He was her ally, the reason she could rise against an empire built on lies. The rain still fell, droplets glistening on the half-open window frame. But within Evelyn's heart, for the first time in many long years, another door began to tremble. Not a door that imprisoned her, but one that opened onto the path of resistance. In the year's final days, London carried a strange light, not quite dark or clear. It was like a thin veil draped over memory, making Evelyn's past appear starkly vivid and dissolving into mist. After that fateful evening of overhearing Sebastian and Victoria's conversation, she sat in her apartment, as if pierced by 1,000 needles. Every word they had spoken still echoed in her mind, dragging forth painful memories she thought long buried. When Evelyn was 4, her mother, Amelia, died. The adults told her, "Your mother was ill. She didn't survive." But Evelyn did not know what illness meant at that age. She only remembered waking to an empty bed, seeing her father collapsed in the living room, and the windows flooded with spring sunlight. That cold emptiness followed her through childhood. Only a few months later, her father, Edward Whitmore, brought home a young woman. Victoria Penrose was just 18 then, dazzlingly beautiful, like a figure painted onto an Italian canvas. Her smile overwhelmed everyone. But to little Evelyn, that smile carried a chill that raised goosebumps. "This will be your mother," Edward said. His hand rested tenderly on Victoria's back, as if presenting a treasure. Evelyn looked up at her father, then at the stranger. Even as a child, she sensed something sharp gleaming in the woman's eyes, nothing like the warmth of a mother. The following years felt like a bird, trapped in a gilded cage. Victoria always appeared flawless. Silk gowns, hair piled high, lips painted crimson, but behind the polished veneer were endless commands and criticisms. Evelyn was corrected in how she walked, sat, and spoke. Any hint of defiance was met with an icy glare, sometimes with cruel whispers, "You're lucky to have me. No one else would bother raising a fragile little thing like you." Evelyn learned silence. Silence made Victoria more comfortable. Each time she was praised as obedient or well-mannered, she saw her father's relief, and Victoria's satisfied smile. Gradually, silence became her shield, a thin armor against the claws hidden beneath her stepmother's lavish dresses. At 18, Evelyn lost her father. They said it was a sudden stroke, though he had been in good health. The funeral was grand, with white wreaths and weeping speeches, yet all Evelyn felt was emptiness. Victoria did not grieve in hysteria. She stood tall, gloved hands still, lips pressed tight like a queen who had just claimed her throne. Within months, Victoria advised, no, forced Evelyn into marriage with Sebastian Drake, a businessman 15 years her senior. "You're too young to manage the estate," Victoria said. "Sebastian has experience. He'll protect you." Evelyn, naive and grieving, surrounded by advisors hand-picked by Victoria, heard the same refrain from every direction. "Sebastian will be your safeguard." But the marriage was never love. It was a contract. Evelyn became Mrs. Drake, a jewel displayed at grand parties. Sebastian never struck her with fists. His control came in words, looks, and his hold over her smallest habits. He praised her silence, rebuked her questions. Over time, Evelyn forgot who she was. 11 years passed like an extended, rehearsed play. Evelyn played the perfect wife. Victoria, the devoted stepmother, manages the foundation. Sebastian, the successful entrepreneur. To outsiders, they were the model high society family. But inside, all was hollow. Evelyn was imprisoned in her own life, drained daily like a candle burning in a sealed room. Oliver, her son, grew up in that suffocating air. But unlike his mother, he was not easily tamed. At 8, he had begun to observe, to remember. He saw Sebastian slip powder into his mother's tea. He overheard Victoria's whispers when she thought the boy couldn't understand. Oliver kept silent, but not out of fear. His silence was watchfulness, preparation. All the pieces fell into place after hearing the truth at Victoria's house. Evelyn realized her entire life was no accident, but a plan set in motion since she was 4. Victoria had seen her as an opportunity, the sole Whitmore heir. Sebastian was simply the next piece, moved into play to complete the game. Evelyn sat in the ornate drawing room, the walls lined with old paintings, but everything felt like it was collapsing. The years of loss, silence, and false smiles had served this scheme. Oliver sat beside her. He did not cry. He did not tremble. He opened a thick notebook, its pages filled with notes, diagrams, and dates. Evelyn stared in shock. Her son, only 11, had been living like a detective for the past 3 years. "You knew all along?" Evelyn whispered. Oliver nodded. "Since I was 8. I saw him put powder in your tea. I knew something was wrong. I started recording everything. If the day came when you were ready to see it, I would show you. That day has come." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes, not from sorrow, but because she saw light for the first time in years. Light shining from her child, the only one in this house who did not see her as a victim, but as a mother worthy of protection. At that moment, Evelyn understood that her father's true legacy was not merely wealth, the charitable foundation, or the Whitmore estate. His legacy lived in blood, in willpower, passed down to Oliver. And now, her son reminded her, she was never born to be a puppet. A week after that rainy night in Kensington, London lay buried under thick fog. The old houses along the Thames seemed swallowed by a silvery grey haze, while the distant chimes of Big Ben echoed like the city's heartbeat, somber, relentless. Evelyn sat in a taxi, her hand clasping Oliver's tightly. Ahead of them loomed an office building, not glamorous, not gleaming like the places Sebastian frequented. Its plain brick walls and simple glass doors felt different, safe, discreet, and honest. Oliver opened his notebook and reread the small business card tucked inside. "Daniel Crawford, forensic accountant." "He's the only one we can trust, Mother," Oliver said. His calm tone filled Evelyn with both pride and sorrow. No 11-year-old should have to speak such words. They entered the office. Inside was no luxury, just shelves lined with files, a wooden desk buried under papers, and the faint scent of mint tea. A man rose to greet them. In his mid-30s, with tousled light brown hair and sharp green eyes that still carried warmth, Daniel bore none of Sebastian's polished arrogance. Instead, he radiated steadiness and substance. "Mrs. Whitmore?" he asked, then gave Oliver a slight nod. "And this must be Oliver." Oliver clutched his notebook tighter and replied curtly, "Just Oliver. I don't like being treated like a child." Daniel smiled, faintly, not indulgent, but in agreement. "All right, Oliver." Evelyn sat down, striving for composure. "Mr. Morrison, my father's former lawyer, recommended you. He said you weren't connected to Sebastian or Victoria, and that you're skilled at uncovering financial fraud." Daniel listened without interrupting. He poured tea and slid a cup toward her. The gesture unsettled her. How long had it been since someone offered her tea as an honored guest, rather than decoration? Oliver opened his notebook, his voice clear and firm. "My father, Sebastian Drake, and Victoria Penrose are stealing my mother's inheritance. Not just the money, but also the entire Whitmore estate. They forged documents and created false psychiatric records to have my mother committed. If they succeed, everything will be theirs." Daniel raised his brows. He had heard countless accusations before, but rarely from a child. Yet Oliver's eyes betrayed no childish fancy. They were those of someone who had observed, analyzed, and understood. "Do you have evidence?" Daniel asked. Oliver nodded, flipping to pages filled with neat notes, dates, account numbers, even transcripts of overheard conversations. He produced a small phone, displaying photos of forged records and documents bearing Evelyn's forged signature while she was hospitalized after giving birth. Evelyn flushed, her voice tight. "I never signed those. After Oliver was born, I was weak, bedridden for weeks. That's when they took advantage." Daniel examined each photo, each line. His calm expression shifted not with surprise, but with restrained anger. "This isn't just financial fraud," he said slowly. "This is an organized conspiracy. High-level crime. If what you're saying is true, then your father, Edward Whitmore, may not have died of natural causes." Evelyn froze. The words struck like a bell tolling from 12 years past, when she had stood beside her father's coffin. The lavish funeral, the sorrowful eulogies, and Victoria standing cold, triumphant. She had once doubted, but never dared to speak it. Oliver interjected. "They killed grandfather. I'm sure of it. I found the life insurance papers and Dr. Finch's death certificate. Both show traces." Daniel nodded. "Dr. Finch?" "Yes, I've heard the name. A man who sells signatures for shady dealings. Linking this together, I believe you." Evelyn buried her head in her hands, too many brutal truths crashing down at once. But Oliver laid a steady hand on her shoulder. "Don't be afraid, Mother. We're not alone anymore." Daniel studied them both. Determination flared in his green eyes. "I'll help you, but we must be cautious. Sebastian isn't just wealthy, he has connections. Politics, courts, media. If he learns we're investigating, he'll strike fast." "What do we do?" Evelyn asked. "First, I need every original family document you still have: wills, foundation papers, bank records. Meanwhile, I'll begin tracing the money. Every transfer leaves a mark, even through offshore shells." Oliver immediately took notes, firing off precise questions that left Daniel impressed. "When tracking transfers, can we cross-check bank data with tax filings? If Sebastian used another identity, how would you confirm it?" Daniel chuckled softly. "Are you planning to become a forensic accountant?" "No. I want to make sure he doesn't get away." Daniel looked at Oliver not as a child, but as a fellow investigator at that moment. "Fine. You'll remember everything. I'll prove it." Evelyn sat quietly, watching them, her son, far too mature for his age, and this stranger who radiated trust. For the first time in years, she felt she had true allies. The conversation stretched for hours. Daniel pressed for details: Evelyn's hospitalization, Victoria's mysterious phone calls. Oliver supplied them all, scarcely missing a beat. When the clock struck 8, Daniel gathered the files, his voice resolute. "We're facing not just greed, but a crime decades in the making. If you agree, I'll follow this through to the end. But be prepared, they will fight back and be ruthless." Evelyn drew a deep breath. Her eyes met Oliver's, then Daniel's. "We've lived in fear for 11 years. Now we choose to fight." Daniel nodded. "Then from today, we're a team." Winter nights in London were so still that the ticking of a wall clock echoed like hammer strikes. Evelyn sat in the old Whitmore library, once her father's study. The desk lamp cast a weak golden glow across rows of leather-bound books, now faded with age. For years, she had rarely dared enter this room. Every object recalled Edward Whitmore, the great father of memory. But now, each detail was a question. Did he truly die of natural causes, or was he murdered? Daniel sat opposite, poring over the folder Oliver had just fetched. The boy stood nearby, pencil darting across paper, taking meticulous notes. The three seemed less a family than a team investigating a crime. "Here," Daniel said quietly, placing a sheet before Evelyn. "Your father's death certificate, signed by Dr. Alastair Finch. Cause: myocardial infarction. No autopsy requested." Evelyn's chest tightened as she stared at the page. Finch's scrawled signature stabbed at her memory like a blade. "My father was healthy. He exercised every morning and ate carefully. I don't believe his heart just stopped overnight." Daniel nodded. "I researched Finch. He's been linked to at least 3 other suspicious deaths, each involving wealthy estates. In every case, he signed off without an autopsy. Each time, the inheritance shifted abruptly to the surviving spouse." Oliver cut in, his voice firm. "I looked it up. Digitalis extracted from foxglove. Small doses treat heart conditions. Large doses stop the heart. Symptoms mimic a heart attack." Evelyn turned to her son in shock. "You know this too?" Oliver shrugged. "I read it in a medical book from the library. Grandfather used to grow foxglove in the garden. But after he died, Victoria had them cut down." Silence hung in the room. Evelyn closed her eyes, recalling the garden of her childhood, the purple blooms trembling in the breeze. Back then, they were beautiful. Now, every petal seemed like a poisoned blade. Daniel pulled another file from the stack. "Not only that, here's a copy of Edward's life insurance, signed 3 months before his death. Beneficiary, his wife, Victoria. Amount, £5 million. And only 6 months later, Sebastian appeared at your side. Evelyn bit her lip. The puzzle pieces clicked into place, forming not coincidence, but a deliberate design. "Dear God," she whispered. "They planned this long before I was even grown." Oliver placed his small hand over hers. "Yes, but now you know, and knowing means you can fight." Daniel's eyes hardened. "The next step is to find original evidence, contracts, letters, files. Sebastian's study will hold plenty. He's careful, but careful men often hoard proof of their victories. Oliver, have you ever been inside?" Oliver nodded. "Many times. He forbade me, but I pretended to look for books. There's a locked cabinet. The spare key is hidden inside a novel on the shelf. Hemingway." Daniel smirked. Typical of a man who thinks he's clever. Fear rippled through Evelyn, but within it surged hot blood. For years, she had been a puppet. Now, she had a chance to touch the truth for the first time. The next evening, when Sebastian left for a meeting, Evelyn and Oliver slipped into his study. The room was expansive, walls lined with awards, photos with politicians, and shelves of rare books. Yet beneath the sheen lay something cold, a dungeon disguised as a library. Oliver clambered onto a chair and pulled down The Old Man and the Sea. As expected, the hollowed space inside concealed a minor key. He handed it to his mother, eyes alight. Evelyn drew a deep breath and slid it into the lock. The cabinet opened with a soft click that thundered in her ears. Inside lay stacks of files, neatly arranged. Oliver snapped photos of each page. Evelyn's hands shook as she turned them authorizations she never signed, transfers of millions to unknown accounts, even psychiatric admission forms bearing Finch's forged signature. One folder froze her. Its cover read, "Medical, C. Whitmore." Inside were fabricated reports. "Patient exhibits paranoia, self-harm tendencies, requires long-term observation." Each page stamped, each signed by Finch. "I've never met him," Evelyn whispered. Oliver kept photographing, his voice taut. "They were preparing to lock you away, then kill you and call it suicide. I'm sure of it." Evelyn clutched her son, trembling. But this time the tremor wasn't only fear, it was fury, roaring to life after 11 stolen years. Daniel's voice came over the phone, steady from afar. "Bring it all. We'll build a legal case. Solid evidence to crush them in court." Evelyn closed the cabinet and replaced the key. Before leaving, she looked around the photos of Sebastian shaking hands with the Prime Minister, receiving medals, speaking at conferences. She suddenly saw them for what they were, the curtain hiding a murderer, and inside her, a voice rose, not Daniel's, not Oliver's, but her own, a voice long buried since childhood. "Enough. I am no one's puppet anymore." She gripped her son's hand and stepped into the dark hall, her heart blazing with a fire she had never known. The crystal chandeliers of the Drake mansion blazed, scattering light into 1,000 glittering fragments like stars. Classical music drifted through the grand hall, mingling with the scents of expensive perfume and aged wine. Tonight, Sebastian hosted an investment networking party, an event society papers described as a chance for big minds and bigger wallets to meet. Evelyn stood before the mirror, wearing the sapphire blue gown Sebastian had chosen for her. Silk clung to her figure, baring her delicate shoulders. Around her neck gleamed her mother's pearl necklace, the one piece of jewelry Victoria had never touched. Gazing at her reflection, Evelyn felt like a peacock on display, beautiful, radiant, and trapped. "Beautiful," Sebastian said, stepping in with his self-satisfied smile. "Don't talk too much tonight. Just smile and nod. I'll handle the rest." "Of course," Evelyn murmured. She had mastered the role over the years. But the heat rising now was not submission inside her, it was rage. She knew Oliver was playing his own role tonight. Oliver wore a waiter's uniform, a white shirt, black bow tie, and a small vest. To others, he was just a boy helping serve. But in his pocket lay a phone, already set to record. In his eyes, tonight wasn't a gala but a battlefield. As guests arrived, tycoons, MPs, bankers, Evelyn stood beside Sebastian, the picture of elegance. They called her Mrs. Drake and praised her gown and timeless beauty. Evelyn smiled back, though contempt churned inside. These people all knew Sebastian was bleeding the Whitmore Foundation, and all benefited from his counterfeit generosity. Yet they looked away, as long as they got their share. Oliver moved silently between tables, pouring wine, carrying trays of canapés. No one spared him a glance. A child servant was invisible, and invisibility was his strength. He slipped phones beneath vases, under tables, covering the ballroom with hidden ears. During the starters, Evelyn caught Victoria's gaze across the room. Dressed in pristine white, diamonds glittering at her throat, she smiled with maternal warmth, but her eyes were cold knives. Victoria glided over, kissing Evelyn's cheek. "You're radiant tonight, Evelyn. Blue always makes you look less pale. I chose well, didn't I?" Evelyn swallowed her fury, returning the smile. "Thank you, Mother." Victoria leaned in, whispering so only Evelyn could hear. "Remember, tonight you stay quiet. Let the men handle business." Evelyn laughed lightly, eyes still bright, but deep inside burned fire. "We'll see who stays silent." By the main course, glasses brimmed with red wine. Sebastian rose, lifting his glass. "My friends, tonight is not just about profit but the future. The Whitmore Foundation is entering a new era. With the family's trust, I hold full authority to steer its assets to lead us to greater triumphs." Thunderous applause filled the hall. Evelyn kept her flawless smile. Oliver pressed a button from the corner, ensuring every word was captured. Soon after, Sebastian gave Victoria a subtle nod. One by one, they slipped out, under the excuse of phone calls. Oliver followed swiftly down the dim corridor, placing a recorder behind a potted plant near the library, their favored spot for private dealings. Sure enough, Sebastian's voice emerged. "We're nearly there. The psychiatric file is complete. Another month, and Evelyn will officially be sent away." Victoria chuckled. "And Oliver? The boy is too sharp. I won't risk him spoiling it. Swiss boarding school. 1 year of isolation, no contact. After that, no one will even remember him." Oliver bit his lip, gripping his tray tight. Rage shook him, but he kept still, letting the device capture every damning word. Sebastian lowered his voice, relishing the memory. "Do you ever regret Edward? After all, he gave you everything." Victoria laughed. "Regret? He was a winning lottery ticket, but he planned to change his will, cut me out. Digitalis was perfect, looked exactly like heart failure, and Finch was so easy to buy." Their laughter mingled, echoing in the opulent library. Oliver trembled with fury but backed away quietly, heart hammering. When he returned to the hall, he met Evelyn's eyes. She needed only one glance to understand they had what they needed. The banquet carried on with music, laughter, and toasts. Guests clinked glasses, discussing projects, stocks, and power. But it all faded into background noise to Evelyn, an overture to a different symphony, the March of Rebellion. She watched Sebastian grin triumphantly, Victoria glowing in the chandeliers, and thought, "You've played long enough. The curtain is about to fall." As Oliver passed with his tray, he whispered, "We have it all, Mother. This time they won't escape." Evelyn nodded. For the first time in 11 years, her smile was not a mask but a vow of vengeance. The gala at the Drake mansion ended late. Guests drifted out in waves of laughter and wine, while Sebastian retreated to his library with his usual bottle of brandy. Evelyn, flawless smile in place, stood bidding farewells. Only when the front door shut did that smile vanish. Oliver was waiting in his room, tugging off his bow tie and opening his notebook. His eyes gleamed. "Mother, I need to tell you now. I got his phone." Evelyn's eyes widened. "Oliver, how?" "He left it in his coat while drinking brandy. I pretended to clear glasses, took the coat to hang up. Just a few minutes. The password was your birthday. He thought that was clever." Oliver's lips pressed tight, arrogant. Evelyn's shock mingled with fear. "You unlocked it?" Oliver nodded. "Emails, texts, bank transactions. I copied everything to a USB and put the phone back. He won't notice." Evelyn hugged him, feeling his small heart racing. "Oliver, you risked so much, but you did what I couldn't." The boy only said quietly, "We have no choice. He'll lock you away. I had to act. The next morning, Evelyn and Oliver went to Daniel Crawford's office. Harold Bennett, an elderly lawyer who had once stood beside Edward Whitmore, was already there. His hair was silver, his frame bent, but his eyes still sharp. Evelyn placed the USB on the desk. Oliver took this. Emails, texts, transactions. Daniel plugged it in. The screen lit up. They watched in silence. Messages between Sebastian and Victoria. The psychiatric file is almost complete. After the gala, Evelyn will collapse publicly. An email to Dr. Finch. Increased dosage. Need fresh certification. Wire transfers to accounts in Cayman and Panama. Harold whistled softly. This is a goldmine of evidence. But beware, if they learn it exists, they'll stop at nothing to destroy you both. Danielle typed quickly, securing copy. We need a strategy. This isn't just divorce, it's organized crime. It requires court, prosecutors, and media when the time comes. Harold nodded. I still have contacts from Edward's day. Judges, a few retired MPs, men who owed him favors. I'll call them. Evelyn gripped her hands together. If my father were alive, he'd want justice, not revenge. Oliver spoke firmly. But justice doesn't come on its own. We have to drag it into the light. Daniel turned to him, both surprised and impressed. Oliver, what do you think is the next step? The boy opened his notebook, pointing to a hand-drawn diagram. First, strengthen the financial trail money flows, shell companies. Second, we need to gather more conversations, recordings, and emails. Third, find trustworthy allies. And last, strike at the right moment, when they can't recover. Harold chuckled. You're 11, yet you speak like a lawyer. Oliver's reply was stark. Because I don't want my mother to die. The room fell into silence. Evelyn bent to embrace her son, eyes burning. Daniel watched, respect rising. This was no mere case, but a fight for survival. In the days that followed, they worked like a covert unit. Evelyn continued her role as the obedient wife, smiling at parties, pouring Sebastian's tea, absorbing his criticism. But behind closed doors, she and Oliver documented everything. Daniel traced the money, uncovering a complex web. Whitmore funds funneled through 4 shell companies into accounts under Victoria's relatives. Harold reached out to prosecutors, laying legal groundwork. One late night, they gathered at Daniel's office. The walls were papered with charts, notes, and arrows tracing money flows. Evelyn stood before them, staring at the labyrinth that had caged her for 11 years. Daniel pointed to one branch. Here's the weak link. A Mayfair apartment, bought with foundation money, registered under a relative who's been dead for years. Prove that transfer, and the whole structure collapses. Harold added, we'll petition the court to freeze assets, but we'll need a public blow, something the press can't ignore. I think the upcoming charity gala is our chance. Evelyn shivered. The gala where Sebastian planned to unveil her instability. If they turned the tables there, Oliver's eyes shone. We'll let them confess. I can plant a recorder in the library. I know the spot where the echo is clearest. If they talk again, we'll have proof no one can deny. Evelyn immediately objected. Too dangerous, Oliver. You can't. But Daniel cut in. Evelyn, he's right. No one suspects a child. That invisibility is his shield. He turned to Oliver. But promise me this, if danger comes, you run. No lone heroics. Oliver nodded, solemn as any grown man. Evelyn looked at the two of them, an old lawyer and a young boy, and both believed in Oliver. And for the first time, fear gave way to hope. That night, returning home, Evelyn sat by the window, watching the Thames shrouded in mist. Oliver had fallen asleep in her lap, notebook open. On the last page, he had written, "They think we're pawns. But sometimes, a pawn can checkmate the whole board." Evelyn stroked his hair, whispering, "Yes, Oliver. And you are the pawn who will turn the board." London dressed itself in the splendor of a winter night. On the Strand, luxury cars lined up outside the Savoy, camera flashes bursting like exploding stars as reporters jostled to capture every gown and every powerful face. Among the most anticipated arrivals of the evening was the golden couple Sebastian Drake and his wife, Evelyn Whitmore. Inside the car, Evelyn sat upright, fingers interlocked until they turned white. Around her neck, her mother's pearl necklace caught the glow of the streetlights. Beside her, Sebastian scrolled through his phone, not even glancing at his wife. His voice was curt, commanding, "Remember to smile. Tonight is important. Don't do anything foolish." Evelyn nodded, lips curving faintly, but in her eyes, a light flared one Sebastian had never seen. Meanwhile, in a modest hotel a few streets away, Oliver and Daniel sat before a laptop. The recorders Oliver had hidden in the Savoy's library streamed live audio to them. They were ready to capture every word of confession. "You think Mother will be all right?" Oliver asked, eyes glued to the screen. Daniel laid a steady hand on his shoulder. "Son, your mother is stronger than even you know. Tonight is when she takes everything back." Oliver nodded, but his heart raced. The Savoy's ballroom blazed with light, white-clothed tables, towers of red roses, and a string orchestra playing in soft harmony. Evelyn entered on Sebastian's arm, and every camera swung toward them. Murmurs followed. "She's stunning, like a queen." None could guess that a storm was about to break inside her mind. Victoria advanced in a gown of pristine white, diamonds glittering at her throat. She embraced Evelyn, lips smiling, eyes like knives. "You look radiant. I'm glad you're lucid enough to attend tonight." Evelyn replied evenly, "I never miss an occasion that matters, Mother." After speeches, the main banquet began. Wine flowed, laughter rose, and the Whitmore Foundation was praised in chorus. Evelyn sat beside Sebastian, hands folded demurely, smile serene. But her heart thundered, waiting for the appointed hour. At 9, Victoria took the stage, her sweet voice carrying, "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate the Foundation's success and must share a sorrowful truth. My late husband's daughter, Evelyn, has struggled for years with psychological troubles." The room stirred. Evelyn's smile stayed fixed, her hand tightening on her pearls. Sebastian rose, playing the concerned husband. "My friends, I love my wife, but I must also protect her father's legacy. Specialists confirm Evelyn is unfit to manage the estate. We've prepared the necessary records to ensure she receives the finest medical care." Sympathetic sighs rippled through the audience. Some nodded knowingly. Evelyn stood, every eye turned. Her voice rang clear, each word sharp as glass. "No, ladies and gentlemen, the one needing care is not me but the man beside me. He and Victoria murdered my father." The room erupted gasps, whispers, disbelief. Victoria's laugh was shrill, brittle. "See? Delusional. Proof enough, isn't it?" Evelyn raised her hand. From the monitoring room, Oliver and Daniel pressed the button. The ballroom speakers crackled, then carried voices unmistakable. Sebastian and Victoria in the library. "Digitalis. Perfect. Looks just like heart failure." Edward wanted to change his will, but he never got the chance. "Evelyn will be institutionalized. Oliver was sent to Switzerland. We'll have it all." Silence slammed the room. Some guests gaped, others snatched out phones to record. Sebastian's face blanched. He lunged toward the sound system, but just then the doors burst open. Harold Bennett entered with 2 police officers, his voice commanding, "Sebastian Drake and Victoria Penrose, you are under arrest for conspiracy to murder, financial fraud, and falsification of medical records." The metallic snap of handcuffs rang through the hall. Sebastian thrashed, "You have no legal proof." "I have lawyers," Harold replied calmly. "Save it for court." Victoria shrieked as officers pulled her away, her glare burning into Evelyn. "You think you've won? You'll always be the stupid little doll." Evelyn's gaze held steady, her tone cool. "No. From now on, I move the pieces." As police escorted the pair out, the ballroom erupted. Reporters surged. Guests whispered in panic. Some slipped away quickly, eager to avoid scandal. Those who once applauded Sebastian now vanished into the shadows. Evelyn stood tall beneath the chandeliers, her pearls gleaming, her eyes ablaze. For the first time in years, she was no one's shadow, she was the center of truth. In the monitoring room, Oliver grinned widely. He turned to Daniel. "We won the first round." Daniel's eyes reflected the blazing lights of the Savoy. Yes, but the real war has only just begun. Leaving the hotel, Evelyn lifted her eyes to the London sky that night. No longer the false stars of chandeliers, but the real night dark, yet freckled with steady lights. She gripped Oliver's hand, her heart filled with unshakable resolve. They would never bow again from this moment on. After the gala at the Savoy, the news spread through London like wildfire. Headlines screamed, "Sebastian Drake and Victoria Penrose arrested at charity gala." Television replayed the damning audio again and again. Online chatter raged. The model high, society family exposed as a criminal nest. Evelyn sat in the Whitmore apartment, staring at stacks of newspapers. Every front page bore her name, face, and the pearl necklace around her throat. They called her the woman who stood up, the victim turned warrior. Yet amid the praise, Evelyn felt hollow. Oliver was different. He followed every broadcast, jotting down details like a junior prosecutor. "They can't escape now," he said, eyes blazing. Evelyn smiled at him, but inside, a shadow grew. 3 days later, Daniel Crawford visited, carrying fresh folders, newly printed financial evidence, threads spun from Oliver's stolen data. He spoke of asset freezes and witness statements. Evelyn nodded, though her gaze drifted. "Evelyn," Daniel said softly, "what are you thinking?" She was silent a long while before sighing. "I should feel relief, but inside, it's empty, as if I've cut off one poisoned branch, while the roots still spread deep." Daniel met her eyes, gentle but firm. "What are you afraid of?" "My father," she whispered. "I always believed he was my model. But the more I uncover, the less simple it seems." Oliver broke in, voice clear. "I think so too. Why did grandfather change his will just before he died? Why did he trust Victoria so blindly?" The question hung heavy, unanswered. A week later, Harold Bennett received a call from the prison. "Victoria Penrose wanted to see Evelyn. She said it's about your mother," Harold relayed. Evelyn froze. Her mother, Amelia, the woman she had always been told, died of illness when Evelyn was 4. That night, Evelyn sat in the Whitmore library, staring at an old photograph of Amelia, a gentle face, deep eyes the only remaining fragments. If what Victoria says is true, Evelyn thought, my childhood was built on a lie. The next morning, she decided to go. Oliver insisted on accompanying her, and Daniel too. "You shouldn't face Victoria alone," he said. Holloway Prison, grey stone walls crowned with barbed wire. Evelyn sat on a cold metal table beneath her palms in the visitation room. The iron door opened. Victoria entered a grey prison uniform. The silks and diamonds were gone, but her piercing blue eyes remained unchanged. "Evelyn," she said sweetly, almost impossibly so, "I knew you would come." "What do you want?" Evelyn asked, voice sharp. Victoria sat, tilting her heel. "Not want, need. You must know the truth about your mother." Evelyn stiffened. Victoria's lips curved in a thin smile. "Amelia didn't die of illness. Your father put her in a mental institution. Because she discovered his affair with me, she threatened divorce, threatened to take you away. Edward wouldn't allow it. He had money, power, a few papers, a doctor's signature, and Amelia disappeared. In that place, she committed suicide." Evelyn's face drained of color. "You're lying." "I kept the records," Victoria cut in. "Her file, her admission papers. I held them as insurance. They're in a safe. You can look, if you dare." The room went still. Evelyn heard her own heartbeat hammering. The heroic image of Edward Whitmore, the family she thought stolen from her, splintered. If Victoria spoke the truth, then her father had stolen her mother from her first. "Why tell me this?" Evelyn asked, voice trembling. Victoria's eyes gleamed, not with pride or malice now, but something wearier. "Because I want you to know, the man you idolized was no different. I didn't create monsters. I only learned to survive among them. Remember that." The iron door clanged open, guards pulling her away. Evelyn sat frozen. Daniel touched her shoulder, but his hand could not chase away the cold flooding her heart. That night, Evelyn told Oliver everything. The boy was silent a long time before he spoke, calm and chillingly steady. If grandfather really did that, then he betrayed mother, too. But it doesn't erase Sebastian's and Victoria's crimes. We still have to finish this fight. Evelyn pulled him close, tears streaming. She saw herself in the mirror on the wall, makeup smudged, eyes blazing. A great crack split her soul, but through that crack, light poured in. Perhaps her father was not perfect. Perhaps childhood was only a play. But from now on, she would build the truth with her own hands. Outside, London lay drenched in cold rain. But within Evelyn, the storm was lifting not toward peace but clarity. She accepted the complexity of truth, and with that acceptance came resolve. Never again would she let anyone else define her life. On a spring morning, the Royal Courts of Justice in London overflowed with people. Reporters swarmed the stone steps, cameras flashing ceaselessly. Inside, courtroom No. 4, once host to trials of the century, was now the battlefield of the Whitmore Drake family. Evelyn entered, head held high. From the gallery, whispers rose. That's the woman who brought down her husband at the Savoy. Beside her, Oliver clutched his notebook, face uncannily calm. Daniel followed, carrying thick files. Though frail with age, Harold Bennett had eyes that burned with the brilliance of his days in Parliament. Sebastian sat at the defense table. His tailored suit fit perfectly, his salt and pepper hair gleamed, but his face was rigid, stripped of its usual smugness. Beside him was Lawrence Ashcroft, a defense lawyer famed for fiery oratory. The prosecutor began with a lengthy indictment: financial fraud, forged documents, conspiracy to commit his wife to an asylum, and complicity in concealing Edward Whitmore's death. Evelyn's pulse hammered. This was the moment she had waited 11 years for. The first witness was Daniel. Calmly, he laid out the financial maps, money laundered through Cayman, Panama, returning as legitimate investments. Charts lit up the screen. The courtroom held its breath. In 11 years, Sebastian Drake siphoned over £30 million from the Whitmore Foundation, Daniel concluded. Not for charity, but for yachts, estates, hidden accounts. Ashcroft rose. Speculation. He managed the fund legally, with his wife's consent. Daniel produced the USB Oliver's stolen trove. Emails, texts lit the screen. Then Sebastian's own voice echoed, "Evelyn will be sent away. Oliver to Switzerland. We'll have it all." The courtroom erupted. Next came Oliver, 11 years old, tiny before the witness stand, but his eyes burned bright. The judge softened his voice. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" "I swear," Oliver answered. Harold questioned gently, "Oliver, can you tell us why you believe your father plotted against your mother?" Oliver opened his notebook, his voice crisp. "At 8, I saw him put powder in my mother's tea. From then, I began recording. 3 years, dates, actions, words. I also planted recorders. This is where he and Victoria discussed grandfather's death. The recording played, Victoria's voice, digitalis. Perfect." Sebastian's reply: "Edward didn't have time to change the will." Ashcroft shot up. "He's just a child. Who would believe this?" Oliver lifted his chin. "Yes, I am a child, but evidence never lies." Silence. Some jurors nodded gravely. Evelyn was called last. She wore emerald green, her mother's pearls gleaming. Her voice carried. "For 11 years I lived as a shadow, controlled, humiliated. But truth cannot be buried. That man betrayed not only me, but justice itself." The judge adjourned. After 3 hours, the jury returned. The verdict rang out, guilty on all counts. Sebastian sat frozen. When officers laid hands on his shoulders, he turned to Evelyn, face twisted. "Without me, you'll never manage a penny." Evelyn's reply was ice. "Without you, I am truly free." A month later, it was Victoria's turn. Unlike Sebastian, she appeared subdued, hair pinned, a modest grey dress. Her defense tried to paint her as a deceived wife, fragile and wronged. But evidence doesn't pretend. Margaret Ellis, Edward's former secretary, testified trembling but firm. "I saw Victoria meet Sebastian privately many times before Edward's death. Edward confided to me, 'If I die, protect Evelyn. Victoria is poison.'" Oliver testified again, presenting a hand-drawn chart. 4 wealthy men, ex-husbands, lovers, Edward, and an investor, all dead of heart failure after ties with Victoria. Each estate funneled back to her. "She is a predator," Oliver said. "Every few years, another victim. Grandfather was just one." Victoria laughed coldly. "The boy is too old for his years. He imagines things." Evelyn Rose, eyes auflame. "No, he sees what I once was too blind to admit. You destroyed my life from the age of 4, but from now on, you will harm no one." The decisive blow came. Amelia's medical file, the mother Evelyn thought had died of illness. It proved she had been institutionalized after accusing her husband of infidelity. The room buzzed. Not only Sebastian, but Edward Whitmore himself was dragged into the shadows. Evelyn wept silently, eyes fixed on Victoria. When the sentence was read, life imprisonment without parole, Victoria turned back, a mocking smile on her lips. "At least I taught you this. The world is never kind. Only the strong survive." Evelyn's answer was steady. "No, we survive not by cruelty, but by love, and my son has proved that." That afternoon, leaving court, Oliver held his mother's hand. Reporters shouted, "Mrs. Whitmore, how do you feel?" Evelyn answered with one line, "Justice does not return the past, but it gives us a new beginning." After long months of gloom, Oliver lifted his eyes to the blue spring sky. A bright certainty burned in his heart. The past cannot change, but the future is theirs. The first summer after the trials, London glowed in vibrant colours. Hyde Park brimmed with children's laughter, and roses bloomed along the paths. Across the square from the British Museum, a banner hung high. Sensory Art Exhibition, a project of the Whitmore Foundation. Evelyn stood on the steps, holding Oliver's hand. She no longer felt like a display piece for the first time in years. Now, the eyes upon her weren't seeking scandal, they carried hope. Inside, the exhibition, Touch the Sky, opened for blind children. Sculptures were made to be touched, music mingled with soft light, and fragrances drifted through the air. A 10-year-old blind girl ran her hands across a sculpture, smiling in wonder as she saw for the first time through her fingertips. Evelyn's eyes grew misty. Oliver guided a group of schoolchildren like a young docent, his voice steady and confident. "My grandfather once said art is for everyone. Today, we prove him right." Hearing her son, Evelyn's heart warmed. Edward had not been perfect, he had caused pain, but the good he had wished to leave behind still lived on, and Oliver was its true heir. That afternoon, Daniel arrived still in his simple suit, arms full of documents. He had become Evelyn's right hand in rebuilding the foundation. But between them, something else had quietly grown. When the visitors left, Daniel approached. "The exhibition was a greater success than we hoped. I think Edward would be proud." Evelyn smiled softly. "You always speak of my father as though he were still here, because in everything you do, I see his spirit," Daniel replied. Then, after a pause, "And I also see you the woman who overcame everything." Their eyes met. For a moment, the world faded. Evelyn remembered Oliver's words, "Mother, you deserve happiness." That evening, in the Whitmore Library, Harold Bennett visited with an envelope from the court. He handed it to Evelyn, his voice warm. "The process is complete. All assets are restored in your name. And one more thing." Oliver leapt up, eyes shining. "Is it my turn?" Harold nodded. "Yes. The court has approved the petition. From today, you are officially Oliver Marcus Whitmore." Evelyn clutched her son, tears flowing. The name carried Edward's legacy, but more than that, it was a declaration. Oliver would write the story anew. The boy grinned, voice ringing clear. "I'm not just a witness. I am the future of the Whitmore family." A month later, they held a small ceremony in the old garden, once stripped bare by Victoria's orders, now replanted with white roses and lavender. No shadows, only fragrance. Friends gathered, Harold, Margaret Ellis, and new colleagues of the foundation. Daniel suddenly knelt, a simple sapphire ring in hand. "Evelyn Whitmore," he said, his voice unsteady but firm. "After everything, I want to be not just your ally, but your partner. Will you marry me?" The garden fell silent. Oliver shouted, "Say yes, Mother. This is the first time I've seen you truly smile." Evelyn looked at Daniel, then at her son. Tears fell, but her smile shone. "Yes, I will." Applause, cheers, petals drifting on the wind like blessings. The wedding was simple, with golden light over their faces in a small chapel. Evelyn wore her mother's gown. Oliver stood as best man, and Harold read the blessing, "No glitter, no press, only truth and love." In his speech, Oliver said, "My mother spent years living as a shadow, but today she walks in the light. Daniel doesn't replace my father. He is family, and that's what matters." The room wept. Evelyn held Daniel's hand, stating that a new chapter had begun. That autumn, the Whitmore Foundation launched scholarships for immigrant children, those often lost in the system. Evelyn spoke at the ceremony. "No child should ever feel invisible, as I once did. Each one matters, and we will make sure they are seen." Oliver stood by her, radiant. Daniel's eyes shone with pride. All the loss, pain, and betrayal seemed to fade momentarily. Evelyn knew justice was never perfect. It could not return her childhood or bring back her parents, but it had given her the most precious gift, the chance to begin again. And this time, she would not waste it. Under London's sunlit sky, the three walked hand in hand, a new family, not flawless, but truly free.